Okay, so everybody, I'd like to introduce Trey Small. He's here to talk to you about a very special project that we would like to participate with the whole class. So at this time, everybody turn your monitors off, close your laptops, and 100% attention to Mr. Small.
Good morning. Thanks for having me in the class. Thank you to Mr. Hackett. My name is Trey, and my organization is Postcard Connect. Just a little bit about me, who I am. My name is Trey, as I said. I live in Dover, Delaware. I've been a volunteer firefighter in the city of Dover for a number of years now. I am a full-time career firefighter for Anne Arundel County, Maryland. So I'm sure all of you know when you cross the Bay Bridge, you're in Anne Arundel County. I work there for the county as a firefighter. In my spare time, I do this. Also, I teach firefighting for the state of Delaware at the State Fire School, and I work part-time for the Newark Fire Department, which is University of Delaware, Newark, Delaware. And then this organization, just how this got started, I was on a cross-country trip out to the Southwest with a friend of mine. We took his Jeep out west years ago, 14. I took a month off of work, and we drove out to Southwest Colorado. We went to New Mexico, Arizona, Grand Canyon, Moab, Utah, and we were out there for about 3.5 weeks. But we drove straight when we needed a Jeep out there, so we couldn't fly. And it took us about 38 hours to reach Gunnison, Colorado, which was our first stop. And when we arrived in Gunnison, we passed out in the parking lot of a gas station for a few hours, got up the next morning, and we went to a national park called Gunnison National Park. It's home of the Black Canyon. It's a gorgeous national park. And just a little bit about the national parks. We as American citizens, we own the national parks. They belong to us, and not enough of us go out there and see them and visit them. And I'm not just talking about Shenandoah, which is kind of a few hours away from us and easy to get to. I'm talking about all of our national parks. They're absolutely amazing. They're stunning, and we just do not go and see them enough and take advantage of that. But we stop in Gunnison National Park, and I'm looking around, and we go in the gift shop, and I was looking for something to buy to bring home for somebody, and I saw the t-shirts, all the different trinkets they have, and then I spied the postcards. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I could mail some postcards back home. So I took a picture of the postcards, and I bought about a dozen of them, and I put the picture on Facebook, and I said, who would like a postcard while I'm out here? I thought it would be a handful of people, and an hour later, we rolled into Ouray, Colorado, and I looked at my phone, and I had 33 addresses, 33 requests for postcards within an hour. And I thought, holy cow. So I went to the bookstore on Main Street in Ouray, and I bought a whole bunch more postcards, and I bought a bunch of stamps. And then I went to, I told my buddy, I said, I need to get out of this Jeep for a little bit. We'd been in the Jeep for over 40 hours at that point. And I went to the rooftop deck at Ouray Brewery. It's this really cool, it's a 3-story brew pub, and they've got a bar up on the roof of the building, and just sitting up there surrounded by the Rocky Mountains. And I sat down with these postcards, and by this point, I'm up to about 40 addresses already. And I thought, man, what in the hell am I gonna write to 40 people? How many times can you write, the weather is here, wish you were beautiful? So I turned to the table next to me. It was these 3 ladies from Denver, Colorado, and I said, ladies, I'll buy your next round if you'll help me fill out these postcards. And they said, what do we write? And I said, I don't know, write whatever you want. And I just handed them the postcards, and they just started writing messages. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, that's it, that's a thing. I'll just do this. So I took a picture of myself with these 3 ladies, and I put it on Facebook, and I said, who would like a postcard written by a complete stranger? Instead of me, I'll just go around and have just random people fill out your postcards. And it took off, and I started getting requests left and right. And it was an awesome trip, about 3.5 weeks out in the Southwest. And while I was out there, people were getting our postcards, and they started posting their postcards on my Facebook page. Like, hey, got this in the mail today. It's really cool. And in some instances, I could pull up a photo of the person writing their postcard and go, oh yeah, so I met this guy, Mike. He was out in the middle of the desert. This guy travels around in his old van, and it's him and his dog, and he wrote a really cool card, and glad you got it. And one of the other things I was doing is, as I was mailing the cards out, every morning I would go and find a post office, which sometimes is a little tough when you're out in the middle of the desert. But I'd find a post office, and I'd lay all the postcards out, and I would take a photo, and then I would tag people in this, and I would say, today's best cards are going out to ding, ding, ding. Today's best card goes to, today's worst card, today's best of the worst, and today's worst of the worst. And people wrote anything and everything on these postcards. I mean, some were inspirational messages, some were really cool quotes, some were like weird stories about your day. People drew pictures, people put recipes on these postcards. But it was a really cool experience, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And in that 3.5 weeks in the Southwest, I mailed about 250 postcards. And when I got home, one of the things that happened is everybody was like, oh man, that was really awesome. That was really cool. Thanks for sending that postcard. When are you going to do it again? When are you going traveling again? Where's your next adventure? And okay, so I'll just keep doing this. And it became my thing. And I became known for that. Every time I traveled, everywhere I went, even if I got off work one morning, if I got off work at my firehouse and say, one of my coworkers says, hey, you want to run down to the city and catch a museum and eat lunch at some food trucks today? Yeah, cool. So we'd go down to DC for the day. And I'd put it on Facebook. I'd say, hey, one day only postcards hit DC. And I would do 20, 25 postcards in a day. And I just kept doing that every time I traveled somewhere. And one of the things that happened over time is that slowly people started requesting postcards for people other than themselves, what I called the FOT, for other than. And we would get a message that would say, hey, if you have a really nice postcard, could you send it to me? And would it be all right if I gave it to my neighbor? Or if I gave you their address, could you mail it directly to my neighbor? You see, their kid is really sick and he's in a hospital and they're not sure what's wrong with him. And I think it would be cool if he got like a nice message on a postcard from a stranger. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And we started doing that. We just started sending postcards that way. Hey, it's my mother's 60th wedding anniversary. My father passed away 10 years ago, but they still celebrate the anniversary. Could they get a really cool postcard? Yes, absolutely. So we started sending postcards for people other than, the person messaging me. And then from there, we kind of decided to expand it. And in the summer of 2016, I took another month off of work. Great job, I just take off a month. And another firefighter and we decided to travel coast to coast across the United States from Lewis Beach, Delaware, my hometown, all the way to Santa Cruz, California. And for that trip, we named the organization Postcard Connect. We put it on its own Instagram, its own Facebook. I took it off of my Facebook page. And we told people we're going to start sending these postcards out to children in children's hospitals. So we told us, if you've got a children's hospital in your area, you know of a children's hospital, somebody that works at one, get us their information, get us their address, and we'll start sending postcards to be distributed to the children in the hospital. And the first hospital we sent them to was A.I. DuPont Hospital in Wilmington, Delaware, my home state. And we just started sending them probably 30 or 40 postcards at a time. And we took off on this road trip. And everywhere we went, all these national parks, we were having people write these really awesome cards. And I send postcards to people all the time. You don't have to be a sick kid in the hospital. You say, hey, I'd like a postcard, here's an address. Boom, send you a postcard. And one of the cool things we noticed, every time we got to a national park, we were meeting more and more of our military veterans at these parks. From as far back as World War II, a lot of Vietnam War veterans, a lot of veterans from today's war in the Middle East. And we started having veterans write really good, nice postcards. And when we got to about the Grand Canyon, I told my buddy, I said, we really ought to start including veterans in this. And we filmed a video from the south rim of the Grand Canyon one morning, beautiful spot, about a little 1-minute clip, and we put it on Instagram, and we said, we're doing the children's hospitals on this trip, but we want to take a week out of this trip and dedicate it to the 22 U.S. service members that take their own lives in this country every day. So instead of giving us your address, why don't you give us the address of a veteran or somebody in your area or a veteran's home in your area, and we'll get postcards sent to them. And right away, we started getting messages from people that would say, this is my friend Steve. He did 2 tours in Iraq. He lost some really good friends over there. He came home and his life is a mess. His marriage is falling apart. He doesn't get to see his kids that much. And sometimes it's a daily struggle for him to keep going. Could he get a postcard? So yeah, we would start sending postcards out to these veterans. And from there, we just started adding veterans homes and veterans hospitals. Just to give you an example of a veterans home in your state, Perry Point, Maryland, at the north end of the Chesapeake Bay. Perry Point, Maryland is the largest veterans hospital in the United States. Between inpatients and residents there, they have about 300 veterans who live there. And they do, the week of Valentine's Day, they do their Salute to Veterans Week. And what we do is we try to get around 300 postcards in a batch and send up there to Perry Point, and they get distributed out to all the veterans that live there. So we get nice messages sent to our veterans, some of whom are struggling with PTSD, coming back from the Middle East injured, and some of them are older veterans from past wars that, they're just older and they need sort of a nursing home care, and that's why they stay there. And then, so that was summer of 2016, coast to coast road trip. Awesome time, great experience. Got home and, more and more people started sending us messages, encouraging us, and we realized that, it wasn't just for the people getting the postcards, it was a really great thing for the people writing the postcards. People loved writing our postcards and being a part of this. So December of 2016, I took all the people that had sort of participated from the beginning, including those 3 ladies from Denver, and I asked people to sort of pick their favorite photos, and I took the 10 most popular, and I turned them into postcards, and we started printing our own cards. So it's what you see right here. For instance, this is Double Arch at Arches National Park outside of Moab, Utah. And we go to a local print shop and we had them print out 10 different sets of postcards. We did our first batch of 500. And then on the back is just a quick blurb about who we are, Postcard Connect, where to find us online, and then just a quick description of each photo. And now people are writing messages on our postcards. What? So from there, now when a postcard, if it shows up at a veteran's home, if it shows up at a hospital, if it shows up at your doorstep and you have no idea why because you're not the one who requested it, you'll still understand, you'll be able to find us online and you'll be able to figure out who we are, what it is we do. And then from there you can write a postcard or request a postcard or send some postcards to somebody somewhere else. January of 2017, I went ahead and incorporated in Delaware. I incorporated as an official nonprofit, and currently we're in process with the IRS to get our tax exempt status in place, which means that people who donate money to us, it'll all be tax deductible. And people do donate money to help us for stamps, to pay for the postcards and the different, administrative costs of running this thing. Up until now, I pretty much funded this out of my own pocket. It's not that expensive, but it does add up over time. Our first batch of postcards was 500, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, 500 postcards, that's a lot. It'll take you forever to go through. And in 9 months, I'd already gone through 3 batches, so I was up to 1,500 postcards, and now we order them in batches of 2,000. So there's 10 different photos in this series, and I brought a bunch with me today, and I would like for you guys to write on our postcards. And do we want to kill the lights? Will it still? Yeah. We could just go through some of the photos real quick, and I can show you guys what it is we do, where it is we travel. So this photo right here, this is Skyland Lodge in Shenandoah National Park. It is one of my favorite spots, and they're really good to the organization. Like, they know us now. We can come in there when we go in the lodge. It's the live entertainment up on stage. When they take a break, they have us come up on stage and talk to the room. So everybody in the room writes a postcard, and we get everybody together for a photo. This was the guitarist that night. She's a wonderful performer, and everybody in there. This isn't even everyone in the room. We together at the end for a quick photo. Do we want to scroll down? Let's. So this one right here. This is Mike Cercio. He is a captain of one of the fishing boats out of Lewis Beach, Delaware, and I actually used to work for Captain Mike as one of his mates. I still go back there and fish from time to time. So I was on the boat one day and I had everybody on the boat write a postcard, and then Mike shot the photo from the wheelhouse of the boat of everybody up on the bow, and I turned it into a postcard. So he was kind of surprised when I came back a year later and his photo was now a postcard. So I had him write on that. The Delaware State Fire School in Dover, Delaware, where I teach part-time. This is the EMT class technician. I went in there and I had everybody except the mannequin write postcards, and we all got together for a photo at the end. Pittsburgh Steelers. So yeah. Sorry. So basically, one of the members, we have a board of directors. One of my board members attended. He goes every summer to their summer training camp. He's not a Steeler. He just goes and watches. And I sent a bunch of postcards with him. And we got about 20 postcards signed and written, nice messages written by a bunch of Pittsburgh Steelers, and also some of the ESPN commentators that were in town. And a lot of those postcards, they went in USO packages to deployed military. Some of the Steelers fans that were deployed in the Middle East right now got some cool cards from some Pittsburgh Steelers. It's just an example of one of our cards written for one of our veterans, and we send these out to these veterans' homes across the country. So people write really cool messages to them, thanking them for everything they've done, and letting, one of the most important things, let somebody know that they've not been forgotten, that their service wasn't forgotten. This is that card from the, this is actually a postcard. This is from the bow of the Thelmadale 5, which is one of the fishing boats in Lewis. And I'm in there at the back of the photo. Everybody on board wrote a card that day. This is, so everybody knows Pasadena, the over in Maryland. This is Northeast High School. They're nowhere near as smart as you guys. They don't even have computers. Look, they're still writing with pencils like Neanderthals. So, but anyway, they all wrote pretty cool postcards. And then I actually went to, so I met in Shenandoah one of their art teachers, and I went to his art class and they drew pictures on there. This class right here, it's kind of funny. So I work full-time as a firefighter in Anne Arundel County. The teacher of this class was gravely injured in an accident, and I was on scene that day, and then she ran into me later in the grocery store, like several months later, and she said, "I want to thank you for everything you did that day." And then she asked if I'd be willing to come in and talk to her class, and I said, sure. So I just started taking postcards with me and having all of her students write postcards. And then when I met your teacher, Mr. Hackett, on Kent Island here, we kind of talked about doing the same thing. So this is how I end up in front of these classrooms, just these random meetings. Luckily, Mr. Hackett wasn't in a horrible accident, and we could meet on nicer terms. So right here, just an example. A lot of the things that people say, I have no idea what to write, or I don't have anything interesting to say. One of the things that people do is they'll Google a famous quote. They'll Google something inspirational. And I always tell people down at the bottom, just put your name and put where you're from. People like to see who wrote their card and where it originated. Even if you're using somebody else's quote, it's still, hey, somebody took the time to put pen to paper and express a nice thought. That's the gesture. This next photo, this is Cody, Wyoming. This is our return leg from our coast-to-coast trip. We had just left Yellowstone National Park, and I saw the sunset in my buddy's side view mirror, and I just pulled my phone out and snagged the photo, and that actually ended up becoming a postcard right there out the side of a Toyota pickup truck. This is one of my favorite postcards right here. This is one of the best ones. This is obviously back when we were postcards. And somebody at random wrote down on a postcard, and I always like that quote. This is 7 Mile Rim outside of Moab, Utah. This is one of the nastier off-road trails. The reason we took a Jeep out there was to be able to drive around all these areas. And this is actually the cliff face. We're standing right on the cliff's edge. That's about 2,000 feet straight down to the valley floor. Just this is fake. I bought this in a little junk store in town. Everybody's like, oh, where do you find that bright blue lizard out there? I didn't. I bought them. This is Shenandoah National Park. This is Skyline Drive. And these cyclists, they were traveling across the United States. It was a charity bicycle ride. And I just happened to catch them at one of their little rest stops and was talking to them about postcards. And I didn't even realize my buddy pulled out his phone, snagged the photo real quick, and I liked the shot. So it's a postcard. Another one of our nice quotes. So this is, everybody says, oh, yeah, the Cape May Lewis Ferry. No, this is Utah. I had to drive all the way to the desert in the middle of Utah to get on a ferry. This is the Charles Hall Ferry across Lake Powell. And the deckhand, Jordan Olson, she was a college student and working during the summer as a deckhand on this ferry. The summer before that, she was a river raft guide in Alaska. So she's had a pretty adventurous life. But one of the cool things about this, the boat that day was crewed by an all-female crew. So the captain and the other deckhand were Navajo women, and Jordan has spent her summer learning Navajo from them. And she wrote one of our first cards for a veteran. And when I showed her the picture, I was like, you're going to end up on this postcard. She was ecstatic. So I had to mail a whole bunch of these postcards out to her entire family so everybody could see she was on a postcard. Another good quote there. That's probably a great quote for being a firefighter. You come up with a plan, and when it all goes to crap, you got to come up with throw the plan out real quick. This is Double Arch at Arches National Park. This is one of the coolest national parks out there. All these arches naturally over time, millions of years through the water and the glacier that used to cover the area. But this is underneath Double Arch Point, straight out. I shot this with my. And this is one of the few national parks where it's open 24 hours a day because people love to go out there and take night shots with all the stars behind the arches. There's a cool shot. I don't have it on here, but there's a cool shot of me. A friend snagged. I was standing underneath Delicate Arch, and he caught this still frame. I'm inside, so the arch is up above me, and I'm a tiny little speck, and then above me is a shooting star going across the arch. It ended up being a really awesome shot in the middle of the night. So Oxford to St. Michael's, the next county, 2 counties south, 1 county. Anyway, the ferry that goes from Oxford to St. Michael's, this was this past summer. I was down there for a wedding, and we took the ferry across to St. Michael's, and I just so happened to have my Lake Powell, Utah ferry cards in my pocket, the only ones I had. So the deckhand, so she wrote a postcard, and I said, would the captain write one? So she took it up to the captain wrote one, and then the captain came down. He was walking around deck, and he's like, "Hey, where's the postcard guy?" So I got out of the car, and I was just standing there talking to him, and he handed me $30. He said, "Man, this is really cool what you're doing." He goes, "We want to help out and pay for some stamps." And I was like, "Oh, thanks. That's really cool." So and he gave me an Oxford Bellevue ferry hat to wear. He gave me. And so we were standing there talking, and then I looked and I saw her walking around the deck, and I pointed to the wheels. I said, "Wait a minute, who's driving the boat?" And he's like, "We're good." It's like, just what? Just an example, and I know this is a little hard to read. isn't about how hard you hit, it is about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Which is a great quote, and this is just an example. This is one of our postcards going to AI DuPont Children's Hospital in Wilmington. And we send them batches now. We send them batches of about 100 postcards at a shot. So I use address, I'm not handwriting all those. We just use address labels when we do like a large mailing like that. And they go to this guy, Sean Byron, at the hospital, and then from there he distributes them out to all the children's rooms. And one of the cool things about that, I realized, you know, I'm well aware this postcard isn't going to cure cancer, but if it brings a smile to a child's face, or, you know, if it's just a corny joke and it makes them chuckle for 2 minutes, that's 2 minutes of the day they're not thinking about the crappy situation they're in, stuck at a hospital. That was a picture from Shenandoah. This is a postcard here. So this is sunrise at Cape and Lopin State Park in Lewis, Delaware, my hometown. This was my dog Maggie. This was her last sunrise at Cape and Lopin, and it's one of my favorite pictures of her. And it ended up, of course, it was going to be on a postcard. This woman right here, she was trapped in her car after a nasty car crash in Dover, where I volunteer as a firefighter. We cut her out of the car, and she came back several months later after a lot of recovery at the hospital, came back to thank us for everything we did, and I had her write a postcard. This is in our museum. I had her write a postcard while she was there. I like that shot. Another awesome quote. Like I said, a lot of people they'll Google inspirational quotes, you know, if they're having trouble thinking of something to say. This is the Big Meadows Tap Room in Shenandoah. A very cool quote. This is Ralph Waldo Emerson, and then again, still, who wrote the quote? This came out of Milford, Delaware. Delaware Air National Guard at the base in Newcastle. One of our guys took cards up there, had them all write the card, and they flew the helicopter. They thought the helicopter was going to be a lot closer. It's kind of a little speck in the background, but still, we got a cool shot out of that. The next picture is Hawksbill. This is Shenandoah National Park. This is one of our postcards. Hawksbill is the highest point in Shenandoah, and that made for a cool shot, and that's probably one of our favorites. I don't even know if we have any blanks of those left. We already went through them all. Winifred Ray, she's a local artist in Dover. She draws on our postcard. One of the coolest things, I always tell people, if you can't think of something to write, just draw something on there. Even if it's like goofy cartoon, kids love that. That's Winifred. I just take postcards to her house, and when she gets time, she does really cool. This is a paintbrush she drew on that one. She just does really cool artwork, and then I take them and I mail them out all across the United States. The next shot is it's the mayor of Dover. He had a 4th of July party at his house. I wasn't invited. I just showed up and made everybody write postcards. I mean, he does know me. I didn't kick his door in, but yeah, I just showed up and. This is the Hardy family. They're from Chicago. I met them on a trail in Shenandoah National Park last summer. They all wrote some really cool cards. One of the cool things about this, like it's just as cool for the people writing them as the people getting them. And a lot of the people that write our cards, we still keep in touch to this day. The ladies that wrote the first 3 cards in Denver, like we talk all the time. And I still talk to the Hardy family. They still message me whenever they see something cool with the postcards going on. The next one is this is actually Children's VCU. I found out that one of the, just like randomly meeting your teacher there, I meet people all over the place, and they'll say, hey, I've got a relative that works at this hospital, and they have a children's cancer wing there. Could you send them cards? Yeah, absolutely. So one of the park rangers at Shenandoah, we were talking, and she knew exactly what the organization was about. I had her write a bunch of postcards, and it wasn't until like the 3rd day I saw her, she said, you know, my kid had cancer, and he was at Children's VCU in Richmond. I said, why don't you give me their address, and I can send them postcards too. So now we also send postcards. Children's VCU Richmond has about any given time 30 to 36 kids there suffering from different forms of cancer that they treat. The next shot